Hey, good people. Grits or cream of wheat? Who the hell is racist? Does anyone ever ask could they touch your hair?
Black Like Me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Black Like Me.
Hey there, Black Like Me podcast family. Hope that you're doing well. Hope that you're taking care of yourself and that you're being safe. You know, I really have enjoyed these midweek flashbacks by dropping old content. It is not because we do not have new content. In fact, we got a lot of new content that we got to get up. But because so many new people are joining the podcast, we're wanting to catch them up on very memorable and poignant conversations that I've had. And so that's really important. I just want to pause here and just say, you know what? People are often asking, what can we do as allies? White allies educate, donate, and they affiliate. And so you're educating yourselves by listening to this podcast. But I'm going to need you to also click the Patreon link because we want to do more. We want to enhance the quality. We want to reach more people around the world. And you can help that to happen. The other thing that you can do, that you can write a review wherever it is you've downloaded this, because that helps us to become more searchable as people try to find podcasts about race, culture, or what have you. Help that to happen. These are things that our listeners can do that can support a Black-led effort. Donate. And by affiliating, that means help the cause. Write a review. Don't put it off. Write the review. If this is benefiting you, then you benefit it. That's only fair, right? Right. This episode is with Reverend Michelle Higgins. And she is an activist. She's known for her work in Ferguson. She's a thought leader. She's a truth teller. She is the host. Well, she's the host of Truth's Table, but she comes up with these powerful things about Jesus ain't white and how people need to really audit their church systems. So if you know folks in the faith community, particularly in the Christian faith community, and you're wondering, are you guys talking about this? Are you guys wrestling with this? Are you guys thinking about this? Share this with those folks. I want you to listen and lean in, because if you're not part of sort of the church culture, this is not churchy. But this is a great way to learn about something or a culture that's very important to Black folks, many Black folks. But share it with folks who might be a part of white evangelical movements or white congregations or denominations, because it just may give them some things to think about. I think people want to think differently. They just don't know how. So help me help them, and help me help you, and help me help us. Lean into this episode. Find some places to experience transformation, because we need you with us to be a part of the solution. All right, enjoy. Our guest today is Reverend Michelle Higgins, who is a force to be reckoned with. She's located in St. Louis. She's the director of worship and outreach ministries at South City Church. She's the director and a founding member of Faith for Justice. She's a co-director of Action St. Louis. She's involved with hashtag Vision for Black Lives Matter. She's one of that organization. She's a conference speaker. She's her own podcast host. She hosts with two powerful sisters who are cultural theologians and midwives of culture and Black thought. I know I butchered that a little bit, but the midwives part is right. I love that. It's called Truth's Table. We're going to put a link of that powerful podcast in this podcast so people can find out more about the work that she's doing with Kimini and Christina. Reverend Michelle, I am so glad that you're here today. Thank you for being a part of Black Like Me.
Thank you so much for having me. You didn't butcher it. That was great.
Okay.
That was wonderful.
Okay, good. Well, listen, Michelle, I'm going to get into I get into how we met, but what I do each show is I have an icebreaker that we call Black Icebreakers. And so I have questions that I ask my Black brothers and sisters before we start each show. So I got a couple of questions for you. May I just jump in with these Black Icebreakers for you?
Of course.
All right. Okay, here's grits or cream of wheat when you were growing up?
Oh, both. You know, I'm from the middle of the country, so we got it all.
You did them both.
I didn't like to. But I didn't like to eat either because I watched Roots when I was too little. And I told my mama that's slave food. I don't eat that. We free. We won.
Oh my goodness. Oh man, that's interesting. All right, we just lost our Quaker Oats endorsement with that one. No, I'm teasing. So Michelle, when you did eat slave food, did you eat it with butter and sugar? Did you eat grits with butter and sugar, or did you just protest like Kunta?
Oh, butter and sugar for sure. So I grew up and became bougie, and then you got to put cheese in it when you bougie. You got to put shrimp on it.
That's right. Then you got to put shrimp on it. Oh, man, I love that. Hey, when it comes to greens, collards or turnips, you have a preference?
Collards every time.
See, Michelle, that's why we can.
And some mustard.
Oh, and some mustard. All right, I got you. I got you.
Tang. You got to mix the mustard with the collards for a good tang.
Oh, my goodness. Now, listen, now you're
and
young.
You eat them the first day, Rev. You got to eat them the second day.
Because why? Tell me, and this is really important. Okay, so for our white listeners, you're about to hear some good black speak. Listen into the mic. Listen, why are collard greens better on the second day, Michelle?
Because it continues to absorb all the flavors that you put in there. Now, we was growing up, we used ham hocks, and now we got to use smoked turkey, right,
because we want to live longer.
Elevated for the conscious.
Yes, we do.
Sisters now.
That's right. That's right. So what I do is I throw the ham hock in when they ain't looking.
Exactly. They don't even know. They'd be like, "Oh, these taste so much better." We're like, "That's right.
That's right." And you know what? And they even slice the salt pork for you now, so you don't even have to hurt your wrist trying to cut that stuff.
Oh my!
It's sliced like bacon. Yes.
Technology is out of control.
You know what? I made some greens. I got an Instapot. And and so for Christmas, and so I made some greens, put them away like a week ago because we had just a little bit left in a freezer container because I didn't want them to go bad. My mother-in-law, she lives with us. She pulled them out last night and had them warming up when I came home. So they've been sitting in the freezer so that what's that thing? Is it called cryogenics? What's the when you call when you cryogenics? We cryogenocide those cryogenicides those greens. Listen, my toes was curling. I said, Lord, I thank you. Them collard greens have been sitting in them juices. And frozen to hold it right in place so it couldn't go nowhere.
That's right.
Come on.
I mean, people don't know. They don't know. What a blessing.
That is a blessing. My goodness. Hey, growing up, Michelle, did you have play cousins that maybe it wasn't until later, adulthood or your late teens, did you realize, wait a minute, you mean Pookie ain't my cousin? Did you have play cousins?
Oh, yeah, we have play uncles and play aunties, too. I had no idea that they weren't related to my parents.
Wow.
Yeah, all my play uncles.
All your play, you got them. Can you swim?
Oh, look. Some days. If you put a Jose Cuervo in my hand, I can swim. You got to be really daring.
Come on now, I like that. Michelle, growing up, did your family make toast in a broiler oven? Because I know, people got the fancy toasters, but some of us when we were kids, now this might be just a product of the '60s, but we taught it to our daughter. But did your family butter toast and put it in the broiler when you were growing up?
Absolutely, and sometimes if you woke up early enough, you could get up, and ask your mom to just break up some sliced cheese and put the cheese on top of the butter. Oh my God, it was a blessing. But you got to wake up early for that.
But you got to wake up early.
Other step.
That's a whole nother. Now, excuse me, that's so funny. Did you grow up with the term or the concept of splitting the pole as you and family or friends are walking down the street? Have you heard of that concept?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
no,
all right.
We didn't have that.
Okay, some of the folks from the South used to feel like if you're walking down the street and one of you went around a mailbox or a street sign, you would split the pole and somehow man bad luck. Okay, no, that's no problem. Let me see. I'm just asking folks. Did you have an aunt or an uncle or relative who carried a Ziploc bag or aluminum in their purse just in case they didn't finish all their food at a family gathering and they were notorious for taking biscuits and food home? Did you have anybody in your family who did that?
At all times. I believe it is just 2 out of my mom's 6 siblings that did not do that. So that's the majority of people.
That's the majority.
To the point that now my mom she's the oldest living sibling in her family now. So she's like the matriarch of her family. And she just buys Costco size, big box store size cases. We just order cases of to-go plates. We just set them out next to the dinner on Sunday. People come through it.
They come through,
They get their plate, and then they make their to-go plate.
You know what's so funny, Michelle? Literally. So Fountain of Life is a multi-ethnic church. You get to find that out firsthand because I definitely want you to come up and preach sometime. So I'm just saying that while I got you on the air. I would love to have you come up and help stir up some stuff. But like we'd have a potluck, and we'd have we're gonna do it. We have a cross-cultural serving team, but some of the white folks would say the black people get plates to go. Like what does that mean? They get plates? Like they ask if we have any aluminum, we get plates to go. They don't understand that when black people go to weddings, funerals, birthdays, parties, we eat there and then we get a plate to go.
That's right. It's a compliment. Really? If nobody want to take your food home, you did something wrong, boo-boo.
That's right. It ain't my fault because you cooked here. Michelle, did you grow up in a church where black people held one finger up in the air when they walked, or they moved while the preacher was talking?
Yeah. Yeah, we call it tipping out.
That's called tipping out. Oh, my goodness. Now, you hear different stories, but what was your take? Did anybody explain why that meant and why you held your finger up? Did anybody ever explain that, or it's just something folks just did?
It was to show that you knew that you were probably being a disturbance and you were sorry. So it was like you're supposed to put your finger up and bow your head down a little bit just so that people could see, I'm on a mission here. I'm not just being idle.
I'm going to get a plate. I'm leaving to go get a plate before all the food is gone.
Most of the time, people was heading down like, I got to help set up the reception. I got to help set up the fellowship. No, you don't. You just want to get them wings for anybody else.
That's what you want to do. Oh, my goodness.
I have a lot of respect for that.
My goodness. Michelle, that's good. Hey, thank you. Thank you for participating in Black Icebreakers. What's really interesting is the two gentlemen in my studio today, both my producer and engineer, are white. And it's interesting that when we talk about these questions, whether you're black and from the West Coast, the South, Midwest, we have these similar experiences. And it's just amazing to me that I'm sure it's all grounded in the South, but how someone from Atlanta and how someone in LA explains the church finger and tipping out, or the ant with the aluminum foil or making a plate. I just think it shows the beauty and the strength of black culture. And so folks love listening in saying, how did they all know the answer to this? Like, how do they consistently have people come in and give these same answers? So I just love that display of the strength of our culture. So thank you for participating.
Yeah. I'm honored.
Oh, no. And listen, you may not know these gentlemen, but I promised them I would do this shout out. A few months ago, I had some guests from Chicago, Will and Kellen, and they host a podcast that's called Wild Wild World. And they said, you know what? Here's a podcast you got to listen to. So they started me listening to you. And they said, if there's any way you could get this person on your show, they do a podcast called Truth's Table, and it's hosted by Michelle Higgins. I said, wait a minute. I know Reverend Michelle. So when they found out that you were coming on the show, they said, you got to give us a shout out, G. So I'm giving a shout out to my boys from Chicago and Wild Wild World. Your girl, Michelle Higgins, is on the show. So I just don't let it be said that Dr. Alex G forgets the bridges that bring him over. But I knew her before y'all, but I'm giving you the shout out because y'all just brought it to my attention.
No.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, so we met.
Chicago just down the road.
It's just down the road.
We'll hook up. We'll do something.
Come on. Okay. Will and Kellen, did you hear that? Okay. We might have to just meet up someplace. And you know what, Michelle, I was just talking to Tyler today, and I'm a foodie. And so we talked about getting up really early some Friday morning, because Tyler and I are both off on Fridays. We talked about like getting on the road like 5 o'clock and getting to St. Louis for some lunch and bringing back some butter gooey. Or is it called gooey butter cakes?
Gooey butter cakes.
Gooey butter cakes.
Don't miss it.
Get some barbecue food. Get some good culture food, and then be back home in Madison. Listen, if we do that, Michelle, we're gonna find that we're gonna do it on the day you're in town. So maybe you can show us some good restaurants, and we might pick up Will and Kellen along the way.
Absolutely. The St. Louis is one of the best foodie towns in the nation.
That's what I hear. So we're on our way.
stuff.
So Tyler, we had no down there. So Michelle, you and I met a few years ago at Urbana. It's a student missions conference, a triennial conference that InterVarsity Christian Fellowship puts on. And my wife and I were there to really serve the platform speakers. We met with them behind the stage, had a word of prayer with them. But you spoke one of the first nights and just blew. I just want you to know, I've been a preacher for like 30, 35 years. Your boldness, your eloquence, your honesty, your theological insight, how you flat-footedly, anybody ever heard that word, flat-footedly, stood there and told the truth about race relations. And I said at that point, my wife and I said, that's someone we need to build a friendship with, because it's so refreshing to hear someone who is so unapologetically a person of faith, and you hold a Christian faith, but you understand the issues surrounding race and injustice. And so I just want you to know that is such a powerful combination. So first of all, I know that was years ago, at least 3 years ago, but I just want to affirm again, that was a powerful delivery, and things that you said are still reverberating throughout the faith community. But one, I just wanted to let you know, I appreciate you and your boldness. I just have to let you know that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Sure. And so listen, people want to hear from you. So I've got a bunch of questions that I want to fire off that could either lead to deeper discussions, but just letting us know a little bit more about you. And I know you're always on shows talking about issues because you are very strong and visible, as well as behind the scenes advocate in Ferguson. And I know you're presenting at a conference later on this fall that's talking about liberating evangelicalism. You're always in these areas, but I want people to get to know the sister behind some of this. And so I just got a bunch of questions that you can spend as much time or little time answering. But I guess one of the things I want to know is, how did you meet the two sisters who are your fellow hosts for Truth's Table?
Christina Edmondson and I, we corresponded. It was kind of like this email pen pal relationship that started up.
Wow.
Maybe the day after I spoke at Urbana.
Really?
And and her husband, Dr. Micah Edmondson, whose book on the theodicy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is not to be missed.
Oh, that's her husband.
Yeah, Micah Edmondson is Christina's husband, and I highly recommend his book. Sure. But Christina and I just love each other. And I mean, I was reading the things she had posted. She saw my talk at Urbana, and a lot of her work in cultural competency and sociology, specifically focusing on race bias and then trauma. She has a lot of important notes and speeches, and I think the woman preaches.
Sure.
But
sure.
I don't always like to put that out there.
I think you just did.
Trying to keep my people safe.
That's right.
But Christina and I experienced a really deep connection, similar with Ekemini and I. Ekemini was one of, if not the only Black woman in the MDiv program at Westminster at the time when she and I met, and I was one of 3 or 4 Black women in the Masters of Divinity program at Covenant Seminary in St. Louis when I was getting my MDiv. And so the connections around the theological worlds that we were a part of were quick, because there just wasn't a lot of sisters talking about theology and not about other things more associated with homemaking, things more associated with children's ministry, which I think it's disappointing that we tell women in a lot of evangelical circles, you can only serve children and your home. That, to me, removes the dignity, beauty, power, and value of serving children and building a home when you tell a woman that because you're lesser, you can only do this. Wow. And we were talking about how Christina and I are mothers. Ekemini is a single woman who was, in a lot of ways, has been told by mostly white evangelicals, your value is unsure unless or until a man is attached. And so I think that we first started talking through what's it like to be a Black woman in America, and then specifically to find your spiritual and theological home in a place where being Black and a woman puts you the furthest distance from access to empowerment. And so we did a lot of conversing around that in group chat, texting each other, for about a year. And then a good friend of ours, his name is Bo, approached us. He's a podcast producer in Mississippi, and he approached us at a conference that I used to run called LDR. And he said, y'all have got to do a podcast. And the rest is recent history.
Well, we appreciate Bo. I tell you that the airwaves and your podcast listeners appreciate Bo. That's great. Michelle, what did you want to be when you were growing up, when you were young? Maybe in your teens. What did you aspire to become?
Okay. I was like, I was something different every day.
Really? Well, let's go a little bit younger. What are some of your earliest remembrances of what you aspired to be as a young girl growing up?
I always tell the story of around the time I want to say my 7th birthday, my mom gave me the book for colored girls who's considered suicide when the rainbow is enough.
Right.
And when I read Ntozake Shange's work, and when I realized that woman was from St. Louis, Missouri, I was like, what? I thought I was growing up in Nazareth, and here we come.
Wow.
St. Louis was like just not the place to be messed with when I was little.
Sure.
In fact, like a lot of African Americans in the 70s and 80s, my parents were like, we got to get out of here in order to save our children. But I always had a love for St. Louis. And I read Ntozake Shange's work, and I thought, I just want to write. I want to write forever.
Really?
For the rest of my life. I want to write and speak. And that was when I was 7. But by the time I was 10, HIV and AIDS had taken so many of my play uncles, people who had to live in the don't ask, don't tell of the black church, which
Sure.
is another black icebreaker. What do you understand the term gospel gay? And it's literally
sure.
the repression that we put on queer people, and we think we're protecting them by telling them, please don't tell us anything, please don't be honest, because somebody might hurt you, because there's so much bigotry in the black church, but there's so much exploitation of the talents of queer people. And by the time my 3rd or 4th play uncle had died from AIDS, I knew I was going to be, in some ways, an activist. And I knew in some way, somehow, I was going to be a preacher. And I've always thought, whatever the Lord does, I'm going to be chill with it. But I have never thought that either of those potential places of service would move into employment. I've always had a deep sense of vocation in terms of standing up for people and speaking the word clearly. But I never expected that those things would move into employment. And I still don't hold really tightly to prophetic preaching as employment, because at any moment when you say or do the right thing, you really will lose all of the money that you could make from it. It's gone. All the opportunities you might have. I've been canceled multiple times. I just got a cancellation. I was supposed to be a worship leader for 2 weeks in the month of May for a Christian gathering. But the quote was, I'm too toxic. And
wow.
Those things are very discouraging. And so it makes me want to disconnect activism and preaching from money, because then I want to be able to feed my children.
Sure. And
tell the truth and be a risk taker without putting my dependents in harm's way. So it's a complex question answering.
Wow.
Little.
And you gave such a powerful answer. Thank you for that, for being so candid and honest around that. And remember that when you're canceled, you're in good company with folks who speak the truth.
Right.
That lets you,
Amen.
right. You can't feed folks with that, but it does open other doors. And we appreciate, woo, Lordy. You answered the question for me about when did the light switch go on for you about being active in social justice, but you mentioned it, reading your book that you got for your 7th birthday, or your 4th play uncle dying. That's so important to see how your own perspectives informed your call. I'm sure that didn't create it, but it really informed your call. I want to double back for a minute. Something you said about how occasionally you're uninvited to engagements because you're toxic. I work I'm deeply involved in issues of racial healing and racial disparities in Madison, Wisconsin. The county where I live has the greatest disparity between blacks and whites of any county in the nation. We're like the absolute worst. And recently, Wisconsin was named as the most segregated state in the union. We incarcerate more black men on a per capita basis. We get known than any other state in the union. And we're known for being progressive. Our state motto is forward. We're considered the Berkeley of the Midwest. However, this place is absolutely toxic for black folks and for the black family. But what I've noticed over the years is that it is much easier for me to talk to secular or non-religious white groups about race relations than it is the faith community. There's such pushback. We immediately jump to, hey, we believe that there's neither, male nor female, Jew nor Greek, bond nor free, and those are three things that we struggle with the most in church: gender equity, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, nationalities. And so how do you keep yourself refreshed? Because so much of your work is inside white evangelicalism. How do you just protect your soul from not becoming tainted when the very folks you're trying to liberate figure you as being toxic and troublesome?
That is an excellent question. And I do have the personality type that's like, I'm thinking about I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'll think about myself later on after this next trip and this next speech and this next thing that's due. Next movement,
sure. Right.
And I think that in some ways that can be helpful when there is a consistent cry for someone who can self-de-escalate and not freak out about things. That tends to be what I'm able to do, but it'll catch up with me. I know that, and I do have the spaces where I go. I have little shops in St. Louis that I don't really tell people about. I'll just sort of disappear and go and sit in this one spot, or go to my favorite nail tech and have her put glitter on my fingernails just so I can think about something cute and happy. I really nourish and nurture my love for my children in terms of hopefully bridging this chasm between poison and innocence, between the sheer hunger and drive for power and striving for the innocence that we know we have access to before God. And that is very hard for me to visualize and even to capture, just to hold tangibly, knowing that the mercy seat, the throne of grace, these things that I sing songs about, that I write songs about, and I write services about. We're even now recording right now in the Lenten season, and you are supposed to move yourself, situate yourself in a location of hunger and thirst for God and nothing else. And that's really hard for me sometimes when I'm hungry and thirsty for tangible, immediate justice for the right reason.
Right.
And so it is often refreshing for my soul to look at my children and to say, what kind of example do I want to leave for them?
Definitely.
Who do I want them to be?
Yes.
And so the old saying, well, it's not old, but it's the kind of recent couple years old saying, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. I think that I kind of want to be my descendants' wildest dreams.
Sure.
I want my kids to grow up and have so much access to more knowledge, more progress, power, productivity, and to look back and go, oh my goodness, like, how did the people that came before me, how did they do this?
How did they do it?
Accomplish this?
And maintain their sanity and their sobriety. I was thinking, Michelle, I live.
And so my ancestors are my wildest dreams to me, and that's what I want to be for my descendants. So that keeps me slightly sane.
No, there's a 4-part series in my podcast I just dropped about genealogy, where I was able to, I know that my great great grandfather's name is Henderson G. He was a result of rape, a son born into slavery. And I met the descendants of the white slave owner. I met their G's, so we've done pictures together, but we have a powerful, powerful podcast that's out there about it. And what I find is the more I tell Henderson's story, I ask myself, am I what kept him going? Like, I even found the plantation, Michelle. I went down to Mississippi, found the plantation where his owners lived, where he worked, where, the status that he was born into. People just think of, they don't realize that black people were born into the status. It wasn't just a one-time cruise to Africa and you're bringing people back. Folks were born into the status. And I think sometimes that I'm redemption for him, that one day I could bring his name back up out the grave and talk about this green-eyed, half Welsh, half African-American man who lived through the Emancipation Proclamation and its after effects and Reconstruction, but to be buried in 1916 during the rise of Jim Crow and separate but equal. But I feel like by speaking out on these issues and telling his story and reminding America that this was not ancient history, this did not happen 5,000 years ago. This is my grandfather's grandfather. I feel such a powerful connection to him as an ancestor, and I realize that I'm now describing myself not just as a descendant of slaves, but a descendant of men and women who freed themselves and had this vision for their great-great-grandchildren that would never be realized in their lives. And that has been almost as powerful as a spiritual awakening for me, that I'm the descendant of those folks. And when I want to give up, I have to consider what his life was like. He had a fraction of what I had, not nearly the kinds of access. He didn't have a passport. He couldn't vote. And it just motivates me to understand that my connection is not just with history, but I'm a descendant of history makers. And that is extremely empowering for me. And it sounds like that's what you're saying as well.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. And looking at and understanding so much of what, unspoken hopes that must have kept our ancestors alive. Those are the things that I think make me maybe something they hope for and clung to. But I feel like I am like their base expectation, just like the bare minimum of what had to have kept these folks alive was that someone's coming after me.
Definitely.
And I'm staying alive for them. I'm working for them. Amen.
I believe
that's
that.
A word.
I believe that definitely that we have to keep remembering that. And we're living for our children. And what tips us off is when these folks and these systems try to put their hands on our kids. I mean, my daughter's just graduated from UW, the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She just got admitted into graduate school. But her grandmother, my mom, started at the same university in 1970. The world was different. It was the creation of the Black Studies Department. The university opened its arms and welcomed folks like my mom. She got her master's degree in social work, and she didn't even go to high school. She's a high school dropout. But yet my daughter sits in classes where there are African-American students and white students, or a diverse group of students who are protesting in favor of, trying to promote the fact that Black Lives Matter. And my daughter sits in a class listening to white men behind her saying, you know what, I wish I had my car. I would just run those people over if they're protesting out in the street. I'm sure people thought those kinds of things in 1970 when my mom started college as a 30-year-old woman. But it is crazy to me that almost 50 years later, my daughter, who has better grades, is on a full academic ride, has to deal with those kinds of comments while getting her degree, while people applauded my mom because she was a single mother raising 2 kids, going through a divorce, getting a master's degree, paid for on a scholarship and being paid to go to grad school, that my daughter actually has more pushback in 2016, 17, 18, 19 than what my mother experienced. So the sadness is we promote progressiveness, but people don't want to believe that we have not moved successfully, that we've even stepped back. And that's how I think we get called toxic, or I get called an angry Black man for just stating the facts. Like, what meteorologist gets cussed out because they say the polar vortex is coming? Who sends them hate mail as if they create it? We're just stating the climate, but yet you and I can be, and others like us, can be marginalized because we're stating the truth because people want to stay asleep. And that's how we've gotten to this place. Folks have played sleep like these issues don't exist.
And I can promise you that the blowback for our white allies, accomplices, and counterparts is significantly different than for people of color. Our Korean cousins who are waking up and encouraging their communities.
Yes, they are.
Our especially Muslim friends who are standing up for rights around the globe for human rights issues. Our dark-skinned friends in Brazil who are standing up for human rights violations. This stuff is the true toxic issue of our day.
Yes.
And it is easier because of the generational stranglehold of fascism, nationalism, and white supremacy, especially on the moral compass of our nation. Because morality and whiteness are joined, it is easier to label people like us as toxic because it speaks more swiftly. There's a faster testimony. Even though it's false witness, you can testify more easily that our toxicity must be the real poison, because we've all been breathing and drinking and eating and serving our children and discipling our people that we mentor beneath us. We've been doing that through poisonous lenses for decades. For longer.
Right, for longer.
And so the problem, the problem really is that when we talk about needing to dismantle an abusive criminal legal system, that's tip of the iceberg if you're also a person of faith.
Right. Come on now.
What you really need to do is dismantle white supremacy in your worship practices. What you really need to do is ask your children's ministry coordinator whether or not they think that white Jesus inside of every book, every curriculum is informing and instructing the babies that they teach that Jesus is white. I mean, really, we need to be asking whether or not we ought to believe that people who are dark-skinned are only one out of about 12 to 15 folks who only show up during Missions Month in a photo with no clothes or no shoes on. Really, we need to address our culture of colorism that is overshadowed by a polite racism that makes us think there are no problems.
Oh my
If there's anything that the white backlash of the election of Donald Trump taught us, it's that Obama's presidency only served for racists as a cover-up to give them time to plan how they would terrorize us later. Obama's presidency was the polite sort of wash over for church folks, for people who aren't people of faith, to make us feel like we had power. But that after that 8 years was gone, reality hit us again, that you can be boldly racist, boldly terrorist, boldly sexist, boldly bigoted, and still maintain all of the power in a country. Now, none of that should surprise us because the United States is a country built on the massacre of the nations who truly own this land.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is that the church, many people who claim to be blood-bought, washed and redeemed, we are still protecting the folks who agree with that racist, xenophobic trope. That we are now saying we have to respect this man simply because he's in power. And that's what I fight every day. And that's why I do. It's frustrating and sad to be called toxic. But when you know the truth, you are liberated enough, you're really set free enough to see that once the truth sets you free, like Jesus said, freedom is going to be a constant struggle, like Angela Davis said.
Hey everybody, this is Tyler, the podcast manager of Black Like Me. Just wanted to jump on and share 2 quick things about Black Like Me. Number 1, Patreon. Patreon is an opportunity for you if you like our show at all, if you enjoy it, if you want us to keep creating this content, to be able to support us financially and to help us do that. If you're as little as $2 a month, you can join our team. We also have some other higher tiers with some more benefits if you join. So please go to patreon.com/blacklikeme to hear more. Number 2 is that if you are interested in having Dr. G speak, if you're interested in him doing some consulting for you, your organization, anything like that, you can go to alexg.com/contact and you can fill out a form to be able to see how you might be able to bring Dr. G to your business or your community. All right, back to the show.
The views of this guest are not necessarily those that are consistent with the Black Like Me podcast. I love what you're saying. I just said that to be funny, Michelle. I love what you're saying. I am in agreement with you. No, I love what you said. Wait, even my engineer looked at me and said, "Wait, what are you doing?" I sound are not necessarily the views of the views of this guest are strongly congruent with those of the Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G podcast. I love what you're saying. Now, what's so interesting is I'm sitting here next to Tyler, who I met when he was a seminarian, young white guy from Rockford, Illinois. We just did a 2-part series where the subtext was really deconstructing a white Jesus, because again, it's a multi-ethnic church. So he's looking at me as you're saying what you've got to do, because Christianity in itself has been complicit. And I also think one of my questions I'm about to answer, I think, is what do we think the impact of our complicity has been for the broader community? I think the broader church, not just the black church, but the broader church has lost its witnesses, which is why I think there is the proliferation of atheists and agnostics and folks who are just post-church. It is not because they're necessarily tired of our theology of our faith, but the rhetoric, the benign rhetoric, our dogma
comes in.
The package it comes in. They're thinking, wait a minute, historically, we know what you did to the Native people and to African people. How do you not talk about this and then demonize the very same people who you have brutalized, and then take their resistance to your activities as being anti-God when they're really anti-you? And it's just that's such a powerful statement. Thank you for being so clear in stating that. And I love what you said at Urbana, where you talked about white evangelicals sort of having this side piece. I don't think the word side piece has ever been used on the Urbana stage. I think Billy Graham has been there 3 times. Reverend Brenda Salter McNeil's been there 2 or 3 times. I've been on the stage for 2 or 3 times. I don't think the phrase or the hyphenated word side piece, or however you spell it, the single word, has ever been used. So thank you for being a history maker, Michelle. And you got up there and talked about that. Would you mind just restating that? What did you say was the side piece? And people have to Google this on Urban Dictionary. We don't have enough time to define side piece. Just think about what it sounds like. Do you remember what the phrase was, Michelle?
Absolutely, yeah.
What you said?
I fully believe that white supremacy is the side piece of the evangelical church. And I said, or part-time lover, depending on your generation. But
Bam!
y'all know what I'm talking about.
Bam! Yes, oh my goodness. That's when I sat up. I said, wait, who's this sister? Wait, where's she from? Hold on, wait just a minute. Oh my goodness. So oh man, it's so funny. You know what was so powerful about that statement is that you're friends with Howie. Remember Howie from St. Louis? Mm-hmm. He's a part of our Howie's a part of our ministry. So he's not living in Madison.
One of the members of Faith for Justice.
Is he really? Okay, I gotta have Howie in. Yeah, Howie serves on our Ursher board. I'm telling you, so Howie, we were just together at Men's Fellowship last Friday night. I love Howie. We took some seminary classes some years back, but Howie took me out for dinner, took the family out, my wife Jackie, my daughter Lexi, and her friend Malika. So we met at dinner, and you were so low key that when you got on the stage and started dropping all these truths, I said, wait a minute, that's the young, quiet lady that was out to dinner with us. So Michelle, we had dinner before I knew who you were. You were just all laid back. He's like, hey, I want you to meet one of my friends. She's kind of active in the St. Louis area. So I said, okay, Howie, I'm going to let you introduce me to your black friends when I come down to St. Louis. And so introduce me to your black friends. I was like, wait a minute. When you got up on the stage and started dropping stuff, I said, wait, Howie is hanging out with her? Howie is kicking it with her? And oh my goodness, I wish you could have been in the audience. And then for any of my Kojic friends, after you preach, the worship team starts singing the Bishop Mason hymn. Yes, and I'm Kojic. I'm 3rd generation Kojic. And then they start playing shout music, and I start seeing black and Asian and Native and international students dancing in the aisle. I said, ooh, somebody gonna get in trouble. This woman's got up here talking about side pieces, and then they're gonna start singing the Kojic hymn, and then they're gonna start dancing in the aisle. Say, okay, we better hold on. Somebody's gonna start talking in tongues in the mic, and then they're gonna close this whole thing down. But it was just so powerful to see you in that context and to realize that, you know, that we had met a little bit earlier, but to see your energy on the stage after being just so relaxed at dinner was so cool. But, you know, let me ask you, you probably get asked about Ferguson and St. Louis a lot, but I guess what I want to ask you is, what's the biggest lie that America was told about Ferguson from your eyewitness vantage point? Or, you know, if you have two or three, but we don't have very many people we can ask this question to. What's the biggest lie that America was told or led to believe about the actions, reactions of that time that stand out to you? Are you at liberty to share that?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe very deeply that there are always multiple core lies that are the central threat to deliberative truth. And I think that in terms of Ferguson, there's historical lies, then there's a contextual lie.
Break it down.
The contemporary lie. The historical lie, if you haven't read the book Chocolate City, which is a racial history of Washington, D.C., I highly recommend it.
Okay.
The authors of that book make plain a historical lie that occurs around the nation, and that is that black majority equals black power. That's a lie.
Sure.
Because half of the country was majority black during the antebellum slave trade.
Come on now.
You know, I believe that black majority equals white fragility, but when white fragility has all the power, that equals black invisibility and black death. And when we think, so Ferguson was black majority.
Sure.
And there was this assumption that that's where you could go to be free, to own a house, to finally have a yard and a backyard, a place to grill out and barbecue. And when we had family that lived in North County, is what the location, the county where Ferguson is, we'd go from North City, which is one of the most rundown areas in St. Louis, if not the most rundown area. We'd go from North City, drive like 3-4 miles up into North County, and that's where we just felt free because we were in charge, because we were the majority. It is a lie that the black majority is automatic black power. I believe the contextual lie in Ferguson and many places, but specifically in Ferguson, is that the police are always friendly. The police are friendly first. And it's a lie that a lot of black folks were tainted to believe, because we used the war on drugs and a lot of criminal enterprise and other things to make it sound like there were some people who were just so dangerous that we could only trust the police to bring us public safety and community wholeness. And that led to the truly contemporary lie in Ferguson that because the police are always friendly, anyone who disagrees with the police is a threat.
Right.
And I truly believe that whether or not media attempted, certainly some media did straight up say this, but whether or not progressive media attempted to make this plain, that is what was made plain in the way that video footage, interviews, and other things were cast. Faith communities coming out and being on different sides of this lie. But really, it's taken years to get to the heart of the truth, and sadly, it's taken more and more uncovering of police corruption. It's taken the deaths of about 17 different people in the custody of police and local jails.
On camera.
It's taken just real talk. And it's taken a lot. It's taken a lot of activism and protest, a lot of pain, a lot of my own arrest of my friends, my children, being terrified of police and knowing that was the easier position for them to be in because everybody knows my family. And we're marked as protesters. And so to presume that you are a threat, a terror, simply because you're naming police terror is it's a major lie, and we're still unraveling it.
Wow. You were living in St. Louis around the whole Michael Brown and Ferguson situation, correct? Yeah. I mean, you're still. What was the most frightening thing during, let's just say, from the time of Michael Brown's death to maybe the acquittal of the police officers? What was the most disturbing and or frightening thing you witnessed with your own eyes during that period of time?
Ooh, that is a hard question. I mean, there are a lot of scary things that I witnessed in the church.
Really? Tell me some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it can be in or out, in the community, or inside the church or on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of those things, the scariest things you saw?
Just spiritually disturbing things. I would enter church buildings and, be ready to use really a kind of come to Jesus. This is urban missions kind of speech to try to get support for protesters and support for the anti-racist curriculum that Faith for Justice was promoting at the time. And when I would enter these spaces, people would come up to me and do a quick nervous hello and then pull me into a side room and say, hey, we have a couple people here who are, they're threatening to kind of cause trouble, and they are going to watch you, and they want us to point out what car is yours so they can go tear it up. And we just want you to not say anything about white supremacy. They give me a list of words I shouldn't say. And
wow, I heard about that,
white
Michelle.
White supremacy would be on there. Fragility would be on there.
The issues.
Yeah.
The issues.
The reason I was there. And so I'd say I don't know what else I can say. Is why I'm here. I've had been threatened directly, had people do really bad physical things to me. My children have been threatened, and cyber terrorism has happened to our church platforms, but then also to the Faith for Justice website a couple times. But I believe truly, deeply, that the things that would be most frightening to a lot of people were so unsurprising to me that, despite the fact I have to agree, it is frightening to have police marching towards you with guns drawn, telling you, go away, go home, move back, but also literally blocking you in. I believe that those were also the least surprising things that happened. And so the way that we would define what is terrifying, I would equate that with what was least surprising, and that was the act of kettling. Kettling, if you've never heard of it, is when people who are armed force the folks, their enemies, into the middle of either a square or a circle location, sort of a position. Mm-hmm. And police kettled multiple times during the protests in 2014, and then we had 70 days of protest in 2017. And that kettling occurs when police are screaming at protesters, get out, go home, disperse, disperse. But as they are screaming that, they are moving in and blocking protesters in on all sides.
Oh, my gosh.
And so police are giving an order to disperse, and legally they can therefore use forceful disbursement because they gave the order and the order was not met with compliance. So what the law missed is that when police give the disbursement order, they must also be making room for a disbursement.
Exactly.
And it was just so sermonic, almost cinematic, to watch that kettling occur, because it was completely legal for police to lie with their mouths and then to be honestly terrorizing with their bodies. It was completely legal.
And their shields.
Exactly. And when they got around to tear gassing, to spraying, to shooting rubber bullets, wooden pellets, by the time they got around to that, they were completely within their right, because the folks that they were yelling at, who were quote-unquote a threat, all of us unharmed, we were not dispersing. And so it was okay for police to use force on us, despite the fact that we could have only dispersed if we burst through their shields and weapons. And that was definitely the most life-threatening thing I've experienced. But I have to tell you, it is the thing that I am most jaded about, because I am utterly unsurprised that it occurred.
Oh, my gosh. And I want to say to folks who've only heard about Ferguson and other situations through major media outlets. I'm talking here with a woman who was on the ground, on the ground with the community at grassroots level, witnessing these things personally. This is not what Michelle Higgins read. It's not someone's blog that she read or someone's podcast. She was there when these things were happening. This is almost like shooting a person who's running away and saying, "Drop your weapon," when you know they don't have one. It's almost covering your tracks.
Right.
This kettling.
It's Walter Scott.
Yes, exactly. You know, shooting at someone and saying, "Please drop your weapon." That's I don't know what's sadder. I'm with you, sis. I don't know what's sadder, the fact that kettling happens, or the fact that the jading has occurred, that you're not shocked that can happen. That's what our listeners need to wrestle with. So often they focus on what we're angry about and what we're upset about, and not why. I have a movement, an initiative here in Madison that's called Justified Anger, and I am asked more questions about what I think about other black leaders, or when will I stop being angry, more so than the issues that have made Wisconsin ground zero for black families, as if black families have made this the case. And people are they're more concerned about why anger is in my title. You're a Christian. Christians aren't supposed to be angry. And you can't say that to someone who knows the Bible. You can't say that to someone who knows the Bible, because I was able to turn it right. Don't tell Jesus that. Because, exactly. He turned them tables over and whipped that tail. He gave them some syllable speaking. Didn't I tell you my daddy's house would be, they kind of.
With the clap.
Come on, with the clap. Didn't I, with the clap or the strap? One of those. Oh, my goodness. Michelle, just a couple of more questions. I'm loving this conversation. Listen, I realize I can't get everything in one conversation. So before we finish, you must promise me that, maybe later on in the summer or fall, we can talk about having you back on to talk about new issues. So I'm not ending now, but I'm just letting you know I'm not going to try to exhaust everything, because I'm learning and I'm being affirmed and blessed by just being in your presence, sister, just the things that you're doing. So a couple of things.
Thank you.
I think your insights are so on point. They're so biblical. You got strong theology. Is there a book in you that's coming out anytime soon? And if you have to say no comment, you can say it. But is a book by Michelle Higgins on the horizon? I mean, one that's by Michelle Higgins, not shared with other people. Is that on the horizon?
So many people keep asking me that, and I believe in faithfulness to writing. And what is true is I'm kind of still on the ground, and I don't know how Dr. King did it. I don't know how he was so active and so prolific. I really don't. And I do know he was a genius. I think that is why. But it is true that I have a lot of essays and articles in me. They're sitting in a computer, and I do need to just hand them over to an editor really soon. One of the things that I am actively doing is I'm striving to find ways to make all of this history accessible for our young people.
Yes.
I've been really struck by how resilient my children are to this kind of trauma, and they want to learn exactly what they need to know to make sure this trauma ends. My kids are almost 7 and 8, and they've been in this since they were 3 and 4.
Sure.
And they want to know how they can stop this. And so I believe that we need youth and children's curriculum, and I am actively striving for that. I'll have a book. It's not anytime soon, unless somebody pays my bills for a year so I can sit down and write. But
and you know what?
I work a lot.
There are people who can do that. So listen, I want to say to my Black Like Me network and my would-be white allies, you all might know people in the publishing world who would love to hear the tremendous works of this young woman and community activist put into print. So please tweet out at me. We're going to have Miss Higgins' link on this podcast. You can also connect with her, but I'm putting a call out there for someone who can help accelerate this idea. I also have some ideas for you, but I'm not going to stay on the air, so we'll catch up later on. But I have some ideas to get that in print, because that's so needed. And the folks, even King, who knew that they were exceptional, but maybe weren't aware that they were unique. It was the ordinary people who we look at as extraordinary now, Michelle. And so I know you. I met your family, your husband, your dad. I know you believe in the affirmation of gifts and truth through community. The community has spoken. We need to hear your voice. And it is not a self-proclamation of your exceptionalism, but it is an acknowledgement that God has duly equipped you to speak things. And if you are worthy to suffer the death threats and the character assassination because of your call, then you are certainly worthy of having your writings in print. And so I just want you to know you done messed around and talked to the wrong person, because I know people and I have networks, and we need to get that word out. 2 short questions, if you can answer them. What would be your word of caution, or of a, no, let me not say caution, because you've already stated this. What would be your call to white evangelicalism to somehow get involved in this? And then I'm going to ask you the same question to the predominantly Black church and then the multi-ethnic church. So what, if you could just take a few seconds, to folks who are part of white evangelicalism, what's your word of admonition or encouragement to consider the seriousness of appropriate action in this season in our country?
For our white family, my word is audit. Yeah.
Audit?
The word is audit. And that is not because I don't want y'all coming to the Movement for Black Lives meetings, or not because I don't want y'all to listen in the Truth Table and, drop $1 on a Patreon for a sister. But I believe that racism is the fault of whiteness. So you need to audit. Does it sting you that white is not an ethnicity? Does it sting you that anyone who believes that whiteness is a true ethnicity will experience the refinement of divine fire when the Lord burns off everything that about whiteness, and you are left with your true European or Eastern European heritage as part of who you are?
Sure.
You have to audit. If you don't audit what your kids learn, you don't audit what songs you're singing, you don't audit what your favorite author is doing. I'm having to audit in light of Michael Jackson.
Sure.
And so it is time to audit in your homes, in your community, in your person.
Oh, that's powerful. Even what's in your Bible. I'm talking about in terms of images. I'm talking about in terms of images. Right. What would be your message to traditional Black churches? Or predominantly Black church. I don't mean traditional as a worship style, but what's your message to Black faith leaders that's comparable to what you're saying to white folks? Is it audit, or is it a different word to them?
It's definitely a different word. I believe that for predominantly Black churches, I would encourage our people to press on. And I would encourage our people to, I'm thinking so much about Paul's pressing toward the mark for the prize. And before he gets to that hymn, he says, the things that are behind me, I'm leaving them behind. And I really believe that we have not done a true dismantling of sunken place theology. I believe that capitalism is something we're still clinging to so deeply that we can't tell, that we haven't named what's redemptive about our suffering. We haven't named what is beautiful about weakness, because we've been brought into this trope of strength only, strength all the time, when really the strong Black woman, the powerful Black woman, the angry Black man, the enraged Black woman, these tropes need to be reclaimed so that we can see that vulnerability is strong, honesty is strong, getting a therapist is strong, naming your sins, naming your failures, and refusing to use capitalism as an equivalent for blessing, that is strong. So what if we strip away supremacist, capitalist measurements of worth and gain and actually find our value in Jesus alone, a barefoot, most of the time homeless carpenter who is despised and rejected and reigns over all things? I think the Black church needs to press on in honesty and needs to press on and forget and leave behind the things that we have been saddled with by white guilt.
Oh, Lord, we thank you, Lord. Somebody needs to tune up behind that. Michelle, which you did at Urbana. Oh, Michelle, that's powerful.
That was my favorite part. People ask me all the time, what's your favorite part of the Urbana thing? I was like, what? When Shed got on them keys and shredded behind
I
me.
just couldn't. I'm telling you, my eyes I cried at Urbana. I've been to several Urbana. I cried. I said, they are not going to let this woman tune up on this stage. I scarce can take it in. They're not going to let this happen. Let me just see. Listen, Michelle, listen. So, man, I know that I got to begin to wrap things up, but let me tell you something. This has been a phenomenal experience. Let me just say this, because I'd like to really bless our guests by just saying your voice isn't your own. And so don't belittle it or disquiet it. Even the things you write about what you're feeling now, even over the course of time, they may season like the collard greens we're talking about by sitting in those juices. But what you're thinking, sensing, and feeling is going to become more than rhetoric, but it's going to become theological fodder for future leaders. And I believe that what you're saying is a part of the revival that we've been praying for the church. We pray for revival because we want more people to come in and we want them to experience conversion, but from what to what? And you are really raising the bar, a very biblical bar of what conversion is like. And so just know, sister, I'm praying for you. I'm covering what it is you're doing. I listened to your podcast episode about the sunken place, and I just want to remind you of your parent call, brilliance, and bravery that it takes to stand as a mother, daughter, theologian, caregiver, nurturer, to stand in all of these places and to not merely philosophically quote aspects of intersectionality, but actually embodying it is something that in my 30 plus years of ministry, I rarely see. So I affirm that in you. And I just want you to know that you're a blessing to the kingdom, to the community, to our nation. And I'm just really proud to know you. And I mean that with all sincerity, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Rev. Thank you.
So a couple of things. One, I'll be in touch. I would love for you to come to Madison. We need it. Two, I'm very serious about pushing out to the community what they can do to help you write. I got some ideas we talk about off the microphone. And the last thing is, when I do the road trip to St. Louis to get some good barbecue, because I think we have just one barbecue restaurant here, two that are black owned. Oh yeah, we got 300,000 people in our county, so I need to come down there. But when we do come, I would love to meet Christina and Akimini, and so we can just talk and compare successes and scars. And who knows, maybe one day we'll get the Black Like Me team and the Truth Table team together just to talk about the challenges and the successes and how we measure progress. I would love for us to consider doing something like that together that could play on both inside both of our contexts at Truth Table and Black Like Me. So just know I'm looking forward to talking to you about how I can encourage you to write. And I'm looking forward to grabbing a meal and perhaps with you, maybe your dad and some of your crew in St. Louis, because I think those of us who bear these similar scars need space where we commiserate with each other and say, get back in the race. And I think that that's so important. So thank you for your work. And just know that what you're dropping here is something that's going to reverberate throughout this country and our international listeners. And I think it's so powerful that I would love for your folks in your networks just to hear some of the powerful things that you had to say today. So, hey, I'm going to let you get back to resting up. But thank you so much for taking time to be with us, Michelle.
It's my delight. Thank you.
Right.
We have to get together.
Yes,
this is only the beginning.
Come on, you know that. All right. Take care, sister. As I mentioned, this has been another not just exciting, this has been a fabulous episode of Black Like Me. My guest today was activist, theologian, contributing author, mom, Michelle Higgins, who hails from St. Louis, Missouri. And so you all are going to want to share this and help us shake some stuff up. Thank you for being part of the Black Like Me family all around the world. Our family is enlarging, and today's discussion proves why people are listening in, because they just want to know what's the word on the street.
Black like me, yeah.
I want to thank Corey Saffold for creating the music for this podcast, my podcast manager, Tyler Nyland, engineer and editor, Eli Steenlich, my editor, Jeremy Holliday, and a special thank you to WORT Studios, where we record Black Like Me.
Ooh, black like me.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at www.alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.